My name is Sienna Harper. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of how my family applauded my exile at Thanksgiving, and how I turned their applause into silence. Started like every other year. The scent of roasted turkey wrapped the Harper household in a sense of forced unity. Cinnamon rolls, garlic mashed potatoes, the sound of my niece Ellie's giggles echoing from the hallway. On the surface, it looked like a typical family gathering, warm, full, festive. Underneath, though, it had always been something else. Cold eyes, whispered judgments, and the kind of silence that wasn't peaceful. It was pointed. I had always been the dependable one. The one who showed up early to help Mom prep the stuffing, who refilled everyone's glasses before they asked, who left the party last after doing most of the cleanup no one noticed. And yet, as I cut Ellie's mashed potatoes into smaller bites, no one asked about my new job. No one mentioned my promotion. No one even said my name. And then, like a blade through butter, came Vanessa, my older sister. Vanessa with her fake lashes, scarlet nails, and voice so sweet it could rot your teeth. She stood up slowly, the scrape of her chair loud against the floor, and tapped her wine glass twice for attention. Everyone froze. Forks hovered midair. Even the background music faded into irrelevance. "I have something to say," she announced, smiling like a politician right before Election Day. My stomach sank. She turned to me with a look I'll never forget, self-satisfied and smug. "Sienna, we took a family vote last week," she said. Her voice rehearsed like she'd been practicing it in the mirror for days. "And we've decided. You're no longer part of this family." I laughed. First, I thought it was one of her theatrical jokes. But then they clapped. Real applause. Aunt Cheryl gave a soft whistle. My cousin Derek even raised his glass like it was a toast. And my mother. She burst out laughing, as though someone had just delivered the best punchline of the evening. Finally someone said it, she added. I turned to my father, the only person who might say something. Anything. He didn't look at me. He just shook his head slightly and murmured, "Maybe this is for the best." My blood turned cold. I was still holding Ellie's plate. The steam from the turkey fogged up my glasses slightly, but I could still see clearly enough to witness the betrayal that unfolded before me. No one tried to stop it. No one protested. Not even my younger brother, Aaron, who I once bailed out of jail when he got caught driving drunk after a concert. I stood up slowly. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick folder. It landed on the table with a soft thud, but it cut through the air like a gunshot. "What's this?" Vanessa asked, faltering for the first time. "Why don't you take a look?" I said, my voice calm, even surgical. She flipped the first page and went pale. Her painted nails trembled as she turned to the next. And the next. And then came the shriek. She screamed so sharply that Ellie started to cry in Aunt Cheryl's lap. Her husband Joel snatched the folder and skimmed through the pages, his face draining of all color. "Is this real?" he whispered. I nodded once. Every transfer, every message, every lie. The room was silent, dead silent. My mother leaned forward, trying to dismiss it. Why bring all this up now? Or family? That money was given out of love. I turned to her, steady. What kind of love mocks someone, votes them out, and applauds it like entertainment? I pulled another folder from my purse. This one smaller, neater. I slid it to my father. Your hospital bills. Itemized. Receipts included. Then to my mother. A screenshot of the bank transaction from March 14th. You said it was for credit card debt. I sent you $2,400. That same week, you posted a photo from a spa resort in Tahoe. Funny how stress relief and fraud look so similar. Vanessa stood up, voice shrill. You kept all this like some kind of psycho. I smiled faintly. No. I kept it because I knew one day you'd do something you couldn't take back. Joel opened a page at the back. It was a financial summary. $64,500 over 6 years, he read out loud. You gave all this to us. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The silence was my answer. Then I pulled out my phone. Press play on a voice recording. Vanessa's voice filled the room. She always acts so righteous. Cut the money and watch her fall apart. No one loves her. No one misses her. Followed by my mother's laughter. Vanessa gasped. You recorded me. No. You accidentally sent the recording to Laura while gossiping. She forwarded it. Kept it. Like I always do. I turned to my father. You saw everything. You heard everything. And you did nothing. He looked down. Joel looked up from the folder again, voice hoarse. So, the salon money, the hotel charges, the car payments, it was all you. He nodded. Vanessa lunged for the folder. You're just bitter because you don't have a family of your own. I didn't flinch. No. I'm relieved I don't have to inherit your version of family. I turned away, picked up my coat and walked to the door. Behind me Joel whispered. Sienna. Who is Alyssa Green? Pause. Didn't turn. You'll want to read the hotel receipts again. Page 14. And then I left. But the story wasn't over yet. I didn't cry on the way home. I drove with the windows down, letting the cold Portland air slap my face until my cheeks were numb. I didn't even turn on the radio. Just the hum of the tires against wet asphalt and the sound of my breath, steady, measured, filling the silence. When I got home I didn't collapse. I didn't pace. I didn't scream into a pillow like some TV drama protagonist. I poured myself a glass of water, fed my cat Milo, and sat on the couch. The folder I had taken back from the dinner table rested beside me, still warm from the tension it had absorbed. It wasn't revenge. It was insurance. A record. A witness. I had been keeping that folder for 4 years. Every receipt. Every bank confirmation. Every manipulative message wrapped in fake affection. Every time someone said, "You're the only one we can count on," followed by a dollar amount and a time limit. I once thought that's what being family meant. Being there for people. Holding up the weight they refused to carry. But now I knew better. I wasn't their sister, their daughter, their cousin. I was their safety net. Their overdraft protection. Their living, breathing bailout plan. And Thanksgiving night was when I finally got cut loose. The next morning I woke up to 37 unread messages. Most from numbers I didn't save. Few from family. One from my mother that just said, "Call me. We need to talk." I didn't. By Sunday evening Joel had sent me a message. "Sienna, I need to know everything in that folder. It's all real, right?" I stared at the message for a long time. I had never hated Joel. If anything, I used to feel sorry for him. He married Vanessa at 25, full of charm and plans for a small business. She crushed all of that within the first year. But I knew what Joel didn't want to admit. The lies weren't new. They just got louder. So I called him. His voice cracked when he answered. "I can't stop thinking about the hotel charges. The second name, Alyssa Green. I didn't want to be the one to tell you," I said. "But I wasn't going to let her play me for a fool and play you for one too." He was quiet for a while. "She told me it was a wellness trip. Said she needed space." "She got it," I said softly. Joel came by the next afternoon. He stood at my front door with a folder in his hands, mine. The original one I'd brought to dinner. I let him in. "I want to use this," he said, placing it on my coffee table. "If I file for divorce." "You should," I replied. He looked down, eyes red. "I didn't know." "No one ever does," I told him. "Not until the dam breaks." He opened the folder, flipping through pages. "This," he pointed to the line about Ellie's hospital bills. "I thought it was from a family fund." "There is no family fund," I said. "There's just me." He sat back, covering his face. "I was blind." "You were trusting," I corrected. "There's a difference." That night Joel didn't go home. I gave him the guest room and left him alone. I didn't want to be his therapist or his crutch. I'd done enough of that for everyone. But when I checked on him the next morning, I found him sitting on the floor, the folder open again. She said you were selfish, he murmured. All these years I believed it. I didn't answer. He looked up. But you were the one keeping everyone afloat. I know. He stood. I filed today. The lawyer said the documents you gave me were more than enough. I didn't feel satisfied. Just hollow. Like I had finally severed the last tie that kept pulling me back. And then came the letters. The first arrived 2 days later, no return address. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Mom's. Her penmanship was careful, but the ink wobbled where her hands had trembled. 3 pages. Page 1. Apologies. She claimed she didn't mean it when she laughed. Said she was just going along with the group. Page 2. Updates. Dad's knee was acting up. Vanessa wasn't eating. Ellie cried at bedtime. Page 3. The real reason. The mortgage was overdue. The bank wanted a cosigner. If you help this time, we'll put the deed in your name, she wrote. So you know it's secure. So you know we care. I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer, right beside old tax returns and expired credit cards. I didn't respond. On Friday, Luke, my cousin, texted. Hey, I'm sorry about what happened. Didn't know it'd go down like that. And then, after a pause. By the way, do you know anyone who might hire a junior accountant? I kinda got let go last month. Need help with rent too. Look, I no longer mistook pity for remorse. And then came the final card. A small white envelope with shaky blue crayon letters on the front. To Aunt Sienna. Inside was a drawing of a stick figure holding hands with a smaller one. Me and you hiking, it said. I miss you. Do you still make pancakes? My throat tightened. It wasn't Ellie's fault. She was just a kid. She didn't know what her mother had done, or what the rest of them had taken. She just missed the only person who had ever really shown up for her. But I couldn't go back. Not even for her. I placed the card back in the envelope, sealed it in a padded mailer with a note. Yes, I still make pancakes. But I only make them where it's safe to love and be loved in return. I mailed it with no return address. And I started packing. The next part of my story wasn't going to be written in Portland. I moved out on a Monday morning in early December. The kind where the air bites your skin and the clouds hang low enough to press against your thoughts. There was no fanfare, no one waving goodbye, no relatives begging me to stay, not even a single call from my parents. Just a half-packed suitcase, a rented moving van, and me, finally ready to disappear without explanation. I had spent the past few weeks preparing, quietly closing accounts, transferring savings, resigning from my role as senior financial analyst at the firm where I'd spent 9 soul-draining years. I walked out of that glass building for the last time without a backward glance, the cold wind catching my hair as if the city itself was exhaling relief. I didn't run away. I walked with purpose. I chose a small lakeside town in Washington, one that looked like a postcard in winter. It wasn't far geographically, just a few hours' drive north of Portland. But emotionally it was another universe. My new apartment was small, cozier, with wooden beams and a crooked fireplace that lit up with a flick of a switch. The kind of place where you could hear the rain tapping on the window and actually enjoy it. I spent my first night there curled on a second-hand couch, drinking tea and listening to the silence like it was a friend I hadn't seen in years. No calls, no texts, no emergencies. It was heaven. I found work within 2 weeks. Part-time, low stress, and for the first time meaningful. A local non-profit that provided financial guidance to single women starting over. Women who had been used, abandoned, overlooked just like I had. They didn't care that I had once managed million-dollar portfolios. They cared that I understood what it felt like to be alone with a pile of bills and no one to call. I was no longer a lifeline for a family that drained me. I was a lifeline for women who wanted to swim on their own. I started therapy with a woman named Dr. Allison. She had kind eyes and a quiet way of waiting for you to speak instead of pushing you into it. I remember the first thing I said in our second session. I used to think if I wasn't helping people, I wasn't worth anything. She just nodded and asked, "And who taught you that?" It hit me harder than anything my family ever said. I started jogging. I bought candles again, this time for me, not because Mom liked the scent. I cooked for myself for real, not microwave meals after a 14-hour day. I even tried baking. My first loaf of banana bread was dense enough to be a murder weapon, but I laughed so hard at the mess, it was worth it. I was living like I had never been allowed to before. For myself. And then one afternoon, while rearranging the few books I brought with me, I found an old framed photo. Me and Ellie at the coast. Wind in our hair. Her little face smeared with ice cream. I stared at it for a long time, tracing her smile with my thumb. I didn't cry. But I felt a slow, dull ache settle in my chest. Like a memory that didn't want to let go. I placed the photo in a small wooden box and locked it. Not to forget. Just to protect it from being weaponized again. Few weeks passed. The holidays came and went. My new life felt like a breath I had held for years finally being released. Then on New Year's Eve, a letter arrived. I recognized the handwriting even before I opened the mailbox. My mother's, neat and tight, like she was trying to keep her emotions from leaking out between the lines. I didn't open it immediately. I placed it on the coffee table and stared at it while I sipped chamomile tea. It sat there all evening, quietly challenging me. At midnight, while fireworks popped faintly in the distance, I finally tore it open. It was 3 pages written in blue ink. Page 1 was sugar-coated nostalgia. "We miss your laugh," she wrote. "Christmas didn't feel the same without your pecan pie." Page 2 was guilt-laced manipulation. "Vanessa's struggling, sweetheart. Joel moved out. Ellie keeps asking where you are." Page 3, of course, was the ask. "Your father's MRI came back. Insurance won't cover everything. We need just a little help to get through the winter." And then, as if to sweeten the pot, she added, "We'd be willing to put the house in your name. That way you'll feel secure." I folded the letter quietly. No anger. No tears. Just the slow realization that they still didn't get it. They didn't miss me. They missed the version of me that made their lives easier. They missed the walking ATM, the therapist on demand, the babysitter, the emergency contact. They missed the Sienna who never said no. That Sienna was gone. Few days later, Luke texted me again. "Happy New Year, Sienna. Hope you're well. By the way, Vanessa's looking for a cheap 2-bedroom. Know anyone renting? Blah." Again. I stopped letting guilt have my phone number. Mid-January, another letter arrived. This time from Dad. The handwriting was different. Rushed. Angled like an argument. "We're refinancing. Need a cosigner. No payments, just a signature. Don't let a small thing ruin this family." Small thing. A $78,000 betrayal. A dinner table exile. A round of applause as they cut me loose. I folded the letter and placed it next to Mom's. I didn't burn it. I didn't shred it. I simply stored it, like a fossil from a time I no longer belonged to. But the hardest moment came unexpectedly. It wasn't a call or a letter or even a knock at the door. It was a box. No sender listed. Inside was a small vanilla candle, the exact scent I used to light in my old room. There was a card, written in uneven letters. "Aunt Sienna, do you still use candles? I miss the smell of your room. Miss you. Love, Ellie." I sat still for an hour, the candle unopened in my lap. My hands trembled, but not from sadness. From restraint. Because loving a child born into dysfunction is like loving a flower growing through concrete. You want to reach out and save it, but you know the moment you do, you'll be pulled back into the concrete too. I couldn't go back. Not even for her. So I packed the candle back into the box, added a note, and mailed it to the old address. I still use candles. But I don't live in the dark anymore. By March, the air had started to soften. The lake near my new place finally thawed. Birds returned, and early blossoms peeked through frostbitten soil like tiny acts of defiance. I spent my mornings walking along the cedar-lined trails that circled the water, watching ducks skim across the glassy surface, listening to my own breath, even humming sometimes. I hadn't hummed in years. I had been in the lakeside town for nearly 4 months now, and I no longer jumped when the phone rang. I no longer checked my email at 2 a.m., afraid of emergencies that weren't mine to solve. There was a stillness in my life, not empty, just finally quiet. Until one afternoon when the phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it ring. I let it ring all the way through and watched the screen go dark. A minute later, a voicemail alert popped up. I didn't check it right away, just tucked my phone into a kitchen drawer and went back to folding laundry. It wasn't until that night, as the kettle boiled, that curiosity got the better of me. Press play. Sienna, this is Ben. I'm Joel's attorney. He asked me to inform you that you may be required to testify if the divorce moves forward formally. The folder you provided contains critical financial evidence. I just need confirmation from you at some point. Thank you, and I hope you're doing well. I stood there, kettle whistling, eyes locked on nothing. Joel had filed. He had actually done it. I turned off the burner, poured the hot water, and sat at my small kitchen table, the steam rising between my hands. Not from guilt, not from vengeance, but from the strange, surreal relief of watching someone else finally choose to walk away too. And yet, that small sliver of peace didn't last long. On the 4th day of March, another envelope appeared in my mailbox. Different handwriting this time. Smaller, loopier, almost delicate. I didn't need to open it to know it was from Natalie, my youngest sister, the one who used to follow me around as a kid, holding my hand and asking me to braid her hair. The one who eventually followed Vanessa's lead instead. The one who watched me be voted out and said nothing. Her letter wasn't angry. It was eerily formal. Dear Sienna, regardless of what happened between us, I hope you remember that others are affected too. Joel left the house. Ellie keeps asking where he is. Mom cries every day. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just hoping you can reassure the family that things will be okay. They won't survive this much silence. And then, like clockwork at the bottom. P.S. Mom's having trouble with the mortgage. The bank needs a cosigner to prevent foreclosure. Even when they said they weren't asking for anything, they always were. I didn't respond. Because I had finally learned that real apologies don't come with price tags. 2 weeks later, a voicemail from Dad. I hadn't saved his number, but the gruff tone, like gravel poured into a paper cup, was unmistakable. Sienna, this has gone on long enough. Your mother hasn't slept in days. Vanessa's in a panic. Don't let one dinner turn you into a stranger. Come back. Talk like an adult. Let's fix this. I stared at the wall for a long time after that one. One dinner. They really believed that's all it was. A minor squabble over stuffing and passive aggression. They didn't see the years beneath it. The decades. The emotional rot painted over with cranberry sauce and forced family portraits. I didn't call back. I didn't delete the message either. I filed it away like all the rest. Because I wasn't angry anymore. Just awake. But then, on a quiet Saturday in early April, something happened that struck deeper than anything so far. I was out for a walk around the lake, letting the breeze push away thoughts, when I came home to find a small brown package on my doorstep. No return label. Just my name, written in handwriting so heartbreakingly familiar it pulled something loose inside me. Lee. Inside the box. A folded note in colorful crayon and a tiny pink scrunchie I had once bought her on a whim. The note read, Aunt Sienna, I know you're mad at Mom and Grandma, but I still remember you. I still want pancakes. I sat down on the floor, the box in my lap, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket made of barbed wire. I loved her. Not like an obligation. Not like the way I'd been expected to love everyone else. I loved her with a raw, maternal tenderness I'd never had the chance to give to anyone else. But I also knew this. If I responded, if I stepped back into that world even for her, I'd be opening the door to all of it again. The guilt, the gaslighting, the begging masked as love. They hadn't changed. They had just gone quiet long enough to sneak through the cracks again. So I wrote one final message. Short note, folded once. I still make pancakes, Ellie. But only in homes where love doesn't cost anything. Maybe one day when you're older, you'll understand why I had to leave. Just know it was never because of you. I mailed it with no return address. And then I stood on my balcony as the sun dipped below the hills and let myself cry. Not because I missed them, but because I had finally accepted they were never really mine to miss. That night, I rearranged my emergency contact list. No more Mom. No more Vanessa. No more Natalie. I added Ava. A friend I had reconnected with weeks earlier. Someone who didn't need me to explain myself. Someone who hugged me without calculation. Someone who remembered my coffee order and not my net worth. I was no longer surviving. I was beginning. And for the first time in 34 years, I felt like I belonged to myself. The snow finally disappeared for good by late April. And with it, so did the last of the emotional frost that had clung to my ribcage since Thanksgiving. I didn't realize how often I'd been holding my breath for years, until I caught myself exhaling deeply for no reason at all. As if my body had stopped expecting danger to walk through every unlocked door. I began to do more than just exist. I joined a local book club. I baked my third ever banana bread. And this one didn't double as a doorstop. I even started swimming at the lake on warmer days, letting the cold water strip away the old stories stuck to my skin. It was during one of those morning swims that I met Doris. She was sitting on the same bench every time I passed, silver hair tucked under a worn wool hat, knitting needles dancing in her fingers. One morning as I towel-dried my hair, she looked up and smiled. "I see you sitting here often," she said, her voice low and warm. "Looks like you're learning how to breathe again." Paused, startled. Yeah. I used to think I was breathing fine. Turns out I was just holding my breath for years. She nodded slowly, as if she'd lived through 1,000 kinds of silence herself. "Then keep that air, sweetheart. Don't let anyone steal it again." We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. Sometimes healing begins in the spaces between words. Doris became a fixture in my mornings, a silent witness to my recovery. Then, one day in early May, something unexpected happened. I got an email from a small nonprofit I had submitted an anonymous essay to back in January. I had written about financial abuse within families, how guilt could be weaponized, how silence was often currency, and how walking away sometimes cost everything but still wasn't optional. The email read, "Dear Sienna, we found your piece deeply moving. We're hosting a seminar on financial independence and emotional resilience in women next month. Would you be willing to share your story in person?" My first instinct was no. I wasn't a public speaker. I wasn't a trauma guru. I was just a woman who finally stopped setting herself on fire to keep others warm. But then I thought of Ellie, Veva, of Doris, of all the women who had sat across from me in that nonprofit office, silently clutching loan rejection letters or eviction notices. Women who thought being good meant being small and invisible. So I replied yes. The seminar was in a small library hall near the edge of the city. No stage lights, no rows of press, no podiums. Just 30 folding chairs, a kettle of weak coffee, and a dozen pairs of eyes that looked a lot like mine used to. Tired, scared, but desperately hungry for truth. I stood at the front of the room, folder in hand. Not that folder, but a new one. One that didn't contain bank statements and betrayal, but notes scribbled in the margins of my own healing. I told them everything. About the vote at Thanksgiving. About the folder that turned silence into clarity. About the candle Ellie sent and the box I returned. About the therapy sessions and the mornings by the lake. I didn't cry. My voice didn't shake. Because for once, I wasn't defending myself. I was simply sharing what it looked like to walk away and survive. When I finished, a young woman with wide, watery eyes stood up. "I thought I was the only one," she said quietly. "I thought I was selfish for saying no." I stepped down and hugged her. It was the first time I'd held someone and felt like I was giving warmth instead of draining it from myself. That evening, I walked home beneath a sky brushed with apricot clouds. I passed the small bakery on the corner, the one where the owner now greeted me by name, and remembered that I liked my pastries. Soft in the center, crunchy at the edges. He waved and handed me a warm slice of cinnamon apple pie. "On the house," he said. "You look like someone who finally slept well." Smiled. He wasn't wrong. I walked the few blocks home, pie box in hand, and unlocked my apartment door. Smelled like peace. I didn't rush to check my phone. I didn't brace for an apology that came with a price tag. I set the pie on the table and lit one of my candles, the same scent Ellie had sent months before. Not because it reminded me of them, but because now it reminded me of myself. While tidying up the shelf by the window, I found the tin box I had tucked the old letters into. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I just placed it on the bottom shelf, behind the fiction novels, like a relic from a different era. I didn't need closure. I already had clarity. And clarity was louder than anything Vanessa, or Mom, or even Dad could write or say. That night, as I curled beneath a blanket on the couch, I thought about the phrase Joel had used during our last call. "You were the one keeping everyone afloat." I used to think that made me important. Now I knew it just meant I was drowning first. June arrived with soft mornings and longer evenings, the kind of light that slips into your windows before your eyes are ready for it. By then, it had been nearly 7 months since Thanksgiving. 7 months since the night I stood in front of my family, folder in hand, and told them the truth they never thought I had the courage to speak. I hadn't heard from Joel since the seminar, but I didn't need to. I knew he had followed through. Word travels quietly even when it's not invited. The divorce had been finalized. Vanessa lost the apartment, and Joel gained shared custody of Ellie. Somehow, even from miles away, I felt the tension in their lives start to unravel. One Saturday morning, while I was buying sunflowers at the farmer's market, I spotted a little girl pointing excitedly at the same bunch I had chosen. "That one," she said. "It looks like it's laughing." Her mom smiled tiredly, and I stepped back to let them take it. "No worries," I said. "They're all beautiful. You pick first." As they walked away, the little girl turned and waved. Froze. For a second she looked just like Ellie. It wasn't her, of course, but my breath caught in my throat anyway. And that's when I realized. Grief isn't always loud or final. Sometimes it's a flicker, a shadow you only see out of the corner of your eye. That night I walked home slower than usual. The streets glowed amber in the streetlight haze, and I thought of all the versions of myself I had buried quietly, without ceremony. The Sienna who stayed up until 3 a.m. reviewing Luke's resume. The one who spent her bonus check covering Dad's car repair. The woman who was never enough, unless someone needed something. She was gone now. Not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. And then another letter arrived. This one wasn't handwritten. It was printed, official looking, from the county courthouse. Inside, a notice informing me that I was listed as a witness for Joel's divorce proceedings, due to the documents I had provided. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just read it, folded it, and placed it in the keep drawer next to the tin box filled with family history I no longer read. But the same day I also received something unexpected. Postcard. On the front was a watercolor illustration of a blue lake surrounded by pine trees. On the back, 6 short words written in careful, almost juvenile print. "I hope you still swim here." No name. No return address. But I knew. Lee. I turned the card over in my hands for a long time, unsure whether to smile or cry. In the end I did both. That night, I wrote her a letter I never intended to send. "My dearest Ellie, I do still swim there. And every time I do, I remember that day we raced to the edge of the dock and laughed so hard we forgot the world. I want you to know something. When people hurt others and still expect them to stay, it doesn't mean those people are strong. It means they've forgotten that love without respect isn't love at all. Maybe one day you'll read this. Maybe not. But I hope you'll grow into a woman who knows her worth doesn't depend on how much she gives others to stay liked. I didn't leave you. I left the silence that made me invisible. And I hope you find your own voice sooner than I did. Love. Aunt Sienna." I folded the letter, sealed it, and tucked it into the same wooden box that held our photo. A piece of me wanted to drop it in the mail. But the wiser part of me knew it wasn't time. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A few days later, while sipping iced tea on my balcony, I received a text. Eva. Still thinking about your talk last month. You should do more of those. You make people feel like they can start over. I didn't know how to respond at first. I wasn't used to people seeing me for what I offered without trying to take something in return. So I wrote back. Maybe starting over is easier when someone reminds you it's allowed. She heart-reacted it. That Friday, I was invited to speak again. This time to a group of young women at a college extension program. Many of them the first in their families to manage their own money, attend school, or break away from toxic generational patterns. I wore jeans, a soft blazer, and the necklace Ellie gave me years ago, a tiny gold charm shaped like a book. When I walked to the front of the room, I noticed a girl in the front row clutching a worn notebook like it was a life vest. I remembered being her. I spoke again. About boundaries. About walking away from familiar pain. About reclaiming your story before someone else writes it for you. Afterward, the girl approached me. She was maybe 19. Wide brown eyes and chipped black nail polish. I always thought if I stopped helping my family, I'd be the bad guy, she whispered. But I think I finally understand. There's a difference between support and sacrifice. There is, I said, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. And the people who really love you, they'll never make you prove it with your savings account. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. I walked home that night in silence. Not the silence I used to live in, the hollow, biting kind filled with judgment and manipulation. This was a sacred kind of silence. The kind that follows truth. At home I lit a candle, made tea, and sat by the window. For a moment I looked down at my phone. Still no messages from Mom. Or Vanessa. Or Dad. Smiled. Because for once, silence didn't mean abandonment. Meant peace. And I was finally learning to love it. It was July when I finally understood that closure doesn't come with a confrontation. It doesn't arrive as a handwritten apology or an offer to make things right. It shows up in quiet, ordinary moments, like a sunbeam across your kitchen table, or a full night's sleep without waking in dread. That month, I bought myself a small wooden bench for the lake path. I didn't engrave anything on it. I just liked the idea of having a place to sit and remember without being haunted. I visited it every few days with a thermos of tea, sometimes a book, sometimes just my thoughts. One afternoon, I saw Doris sitting there instead, knitting another endless row of soft gray yarn. She looked up. You finally claimed it, huh? Smiled. Feels like I finally claimed something in my life. Even if it's just a bench. She nodded. Some people inherit empires. Others inherit trauma. You're building your own thing now. And that's the real legacy. Her words lingered long after I left. Back home, I found an envelope tucked beneath my apartment door. No stamp. No address. Just a simple piece of cream stationery with my name written in familiar script. Inside, a single sheet of paper. I don't know who I am without you. I know I hurt you. I don't even remember when it started. Using you, expecting things. But I remember the night it ended. I wish I could undo it. I wish I had been kinder. But most of all, I wish I had understood sooner that love is not a transaction. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know I finally see it. Vanessa. For a while I sat frozen. Not because the letter moved me, but because of what it didn't include. There was no offer to repay a single cent. No mention of Ellie. No acknowledgement of Joel. No invitation to rebuild. Just regret handed off like it was something she needed to unload. And I realized then, even remorse can still be self-serving. I didn't respond. I folded the letter and placed it in the wooden box next to the others. Not because it deserved to be kept, but because I didn't need to carry the burden anymore. Let the box hold it. By the end of July, I had agreed to consult part-time for another nonprofit, this one focusing on economic abuse awareness. I gave workshops, helped design toolkits, spoke on panels. Each time I stood in front of strangers and told my story, it lost a little more of its power over me. It stopped being my wound and started becoming my testimony. One evening, while organizing old receipts for a client at the office, I found a sticky note on my desk. In Ava's handwriting. "You didn't burn bridges. You just stopped crossing the ones that collapsed under you." Made me laugh, and cry, and breathe a little deeper. On the first day of August, I got one last envelope. This one was different. Inside, a photograph. Ellie, standing on a grassy hill, holding a pancake on a paper plate, beaming. No note, just the photo. I stared at it for what felt like hours. And then, with a quiet resolve, I stood, walked over to my bookshelf, opened the wooden box, and gently placed the photo inside. Not to bury it, to preserve it. Later that night, I stood at my kitchen window, watching the last pink light fade over the lake, and I whispered something I hadn't dared say aloud before. "I forgive you, Ellie, even if I can't go back." Because forgiveness, I had learned, didn't require re-entry, just required release. And I was ready. The next morning, I went for a jog along the lake trail. I passed the bench, my bench, and found someone else sitting there. A teenage girl, alone, tear-streaked, clutching her phone. Stop. Offered her a tissue. Didn't ask questions. Just sat beside her. After a long silence, she said, "My mom told me I was selfish for not helping pay the rent. I'm 17. I work part-time. She said I'm just like my aunt, who ran off and never came back." I didn't speak right away. Then I said, "Sometimes the ones who walk away aren't selfish. They're just tired of drowning in someone else's tide." She looked at me like no one had ever said that to her before. And maybe no one had. I offered her my number. "You can text me. If you ever just need to breathe." She nodded. "Thanks. I'm Maya." Smiled. "I'm Sienna." That was it. No drama. No grand speeches. Just two women at a bench by the water, finally catching their breath. That evening, I returned home and lit a new candle, the same scent Ellie once sent me. Only now it didn't smell like grief. Smelled like freedom. I sat by my window, the breeze brushing against my arms, and wrote in my journal. I didn't lose my family. I only lost the people who pretended to be one. What I gained was myself, and peace, and the power to say no without guilt. The truth is, I don't regret leaving. I only regret not leaving sooner. Sienna's story is a raw, powerful reminder that blood doesn't bind us, respect does. That silence is not peace. And that sometimes, choosing yourself means choosing to walk alone. For a while until you finally find where you belong. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of something you've lived through, or something you're still trying to escape, share your thoughts below. Someone else might need to know they're not alone. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge.